Yo, what's good, everybody, man? So today I will be reacting to how every Stephen King movie is in the same universe. Now, we know Stephen King, he makes nothing but bangers, dog. It obviously been watching it. Welcome to Derry, Big P. Hey, Pennywise, he do his thing, dog. Bro, I love that show. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm really trying to learn about the lore that takes place in the Stephen King universe. There's a whole freaking turtle out there in the universe that can take out Pennywise or something like that. So there's a lot. There's a lot that happens in this universe. I'm not sure if all that's actually connected, because I know the guy. I forgot the guy's name, but from The Shining, he is in Welcome to Derry. So I'm not sure if they're going based off the books, because this apparently his character stays alive, and in the movie, he dies. So I'm not sure where we're going off of with that, but we're gonna see what's up with this. So enough talk. Let's get into it.
Did you guys know that every single Stephen King story is interconnected and part of the same universe? So that would also mean that
It's
all of
freaking
his
fire.
films take place in the same universe. So we are going to explain, for instance, how Jack Torrance could have been sent to Shawshank prison with Red and Andy, and why Gordy LaChance from Stand By Me could theoretically get eaten by Pennywise. Welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is the Stephen King cinematic universe. We're going to go through every single Stephen King adaptation and tell you how it's all connected to a vast, complex multiverse. So let's start with the Dark Tower. This is a sprawling epic about a titular tower that connects together the entire Stephen King multiverse. In the movie, Matthew McConaughey's Walter Paddock is the same character as the leader of Las Vegas, Randall Flagg from The Stand. Flagg is also referenced in Children of the Corn as the man who walks behind the rose. Now, The Stand is about a global pandemic wiping out 99% of the world's population. And in America, the survivors gather with Flagg in Las Vegas or with Mother Abigail in Boulder, Colorado. Now, Abigail grew up in Hemingford Home, which is referenced in 1922. And in that story, we also get a reference to a nearby family called the Farringtons, who also appeared in the movie Salem's Lot. And in the novel It, Ben Hanscom makes a pit stop in Hemingford Home on his way back home to Derry. Now, in the Dark Tower, Roland, the last gunslinger, is aided by Jake, who is from our world. Jake has psychic abilities. Roland calls these abilities the touch, but there's another name for this in our world. Shining. Jake also has what's called a twinner. That's a doppelganger in another dimension, and that is Bobby, the little boy from Hearts in Atlantis. That movie is about Bobby befriending an older man named Ted, who also has the version of the Shine. In the world of the Dark Tower, Ted is recruited by the forces of the Crimson King, who is basically the big bad of the entire Stephen King universe. Now, the King wants to use Ted as a breaker. That's a psychic who can help destroy one of the beams that holds the multiverse together. Instead, Ted escapes and is being pursued by the King's servants, who are called the Low Men in yellow coats. Now, these Low Men are also referenced by Tack in Desperation, and they hunt Dinky in Everything's Eventual. Dinky is also a breaker, just like Ted, and in the later Dark Tower books, he helps Roland free the breakers that are enslaved by the Crimson King. And in the Dark Tower book 5, the Low Men are pursuing Father Callahan, who is the priest from Salem's Lot, who faces off against vampires. Now, Salem's Lot takes place in Jerusalem's Lot, which is also referenced in the Institute, and is mentioned as a home for a psychic vampire in the Shining sequel, Dr. Sleep. By the way, we're going to I still gotta watch that one. Connections to It in this video. For instance, in Salem's Lot, one character breaks through a vampire.
I want to say this, man. Some of the stuff that he just talked about, some of the projects, never even heard of, but that just goes to show you how much Stephen King has put out. But I'm really interested in the Dark Tower stuff, because I know that is a whole thing on its own. And I believe that the last gunslinger, I believe he's very powerful. And I know about the Crimson King and everything, dog. There's some other different things out there, evil things out there. But the Crimson King is the big bad. And I forgot what the guy's name is, but the guy who Matthew McConaughey has been playing, well, he played in the Dark Tower movie. Apparently, he basically shows up in pretty much every Stephen King adaptation, just in a different physical form, I believe. I think that's how it goes. So this is interesting, dog. Let's get back to it.
fires hypnosis with a chant. He thrusts his fist against the post and still insists he sees the ghost. In It, Bill Denbrow uses this mantra to stop his stuttering.
He thrusts his fist against the...
Huh.
And guys, I am so excited to show you this exclusive It parody device
skip this
packed
shit, no
the
kizzy.
overlooked meta
Skip
pattern.
this,
And we
no
also
cap.
have these are the best way to directly support our channel. And thank you guys so much for your support. Now back to what I was saying. All right, but
Oh,
back
yeah,
to
go
the
support the
Crimson
channel.
King, because he is, after all, the Thanos of Stephen King's interconnected universe. Now, the Crimson King is such a major villain in King's stories that book 6 of The Dark Tower reveals that he caused the 1999 van accident that nearly killed Stephen King in real life.
Wow.
We're going to see references to the Crimson King all the way through his universe. For instance, in The Tall Grass features a rock at the center of the universe, which is a parallel to the stone of the Crimson King that bears his mark. In Silver Bullet, it's implied that the werewolf is a servant of the Crimson King. And by the way, Silver Bullet takes place in Tarker's Mill, which appears on a map in Under the Dome. In fact, most villain in Stephen King stories work for the Crimson King, especially the aforementioned Randall Flagg, who often appears in different stories as different people, but almost always uses the initials RF. So for instance, The Langoliers is about an airplane that flies through a mysterious portal to fly backward in time where monsters are eating the space-time continuum. And the plane,
God, the
Flagg's
CGI
sigil,
looks
a
terrible.
small smiley face sticker that implies that he sabotaged the plane to fly through a thinny in toe-dash space. Now just say right now? All right, so a thinny is basically a place where realities become thin and open portals between dimensions. And toe-dash space is like it exists between universes. Think of it as a limbo that's filled with monsters. For instance, Pennywise the Clown came through toe-dash space into our world. And in the Mist, a mysterious government agency called the Shop accidentally created a thinny and released monsters from toe-dash space into the real world. Now, the Shop is like Stephen King's version of S.H.I.E.L.D. They're a shady government agency that's always lurking in the background. For instance, they conducted the Lot 6 experiments on Charlie McGee to give her pyrokinesis powers in Firestarter. They're also mentioned by name in The Langoliers, and they're responsible for creating the super flu that killed 99% of the human race in The Stand. And
So they
Stand, I should
cause
also
all
mention
kind of bad
has the
shit.
Shine, a psychic ability to see visions of the future and in some cases read people's minds. You know, like we saw in The Shining.
My grandmother and I could hold conversations entirely without ever opening our mouths.
That's
Now,
interesting.
Overlook
That
Hotel,
the whole
setting for The
Shining
is
thing.
mentioned by Annie Wilkes in Misery. Annie is also the nurse for Alan's mother in Riding the Bullet, and she's the babysitter for young Hal in The Monkey. But of course, the Overlook is most famous for being haunted, and the spirits drive Jack Torrance insane.
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
Now, his son Danny survives his father's attacks in the Overlook burning down and grows up to be Dan Torrance in Dr. Sleep. And in that
I still gotta
book,
watch
he
that
tells
one.
John Dalton the phrase, "There are worlds other than these," which is a phrase that Roland the Gunslinger says repeatedly in the Gunslinger books, which refers to the Stephen King multiverse. But Dan
this
is
is so
only
fire.
alive because of another man with the Shannon, and that is Dick Halloran.
Yep.
What's up, Doc?
When Dick was younger, he worked as a cook at a nightclub called the Black Spot in Derry, Maine.
Yep.
White supremacists burned down the club, but Dick's psychic abilities helped him save the lives of several people, including Will Hanlon, father of Mike Hanlon, who was one of the boys from It. Now,
I think he
Derry
did
is
with
one of
that in
several hubs
the
of
show,
Stephen King's
actually.
universe, with evil forces always being attracted to the city. There are
Yeah,
many books
Derry's
that take
just full of
place in
evil
and
shit.
around this place, but we're only going to go through the works that have been adapted for the screen. In the story It, Pennywise is defeated by a group of misfits called the
Losers
Losers
Club.
and they have several connections to other movies and shows. For instance, Pennywise kills Bill's little brother Georgie, who is buried in Mount Hope Cemetery. And this is also where Gabe
That's
in
okay,
Pet
that
Sematary
Pet
was
Sematary,
buried
yep.
before he came back as the cutest little zombie ever.
Oh my God.
Pet Sematary takes place in a town called Ludlow, Maine, which is home of the Orinoco Truck Company that we see in Maximum Overdrive, and it's also the setting for the story in The Dark Half. But there's more connections to It. For instance, Eddie Kasparov's overbearing mother grew up next to Paul Sheldon, the novelist that Annie holds captive in Misery. And speaking of Paul Sheldon, in Desperation, Ellen Carver mentions that she is a huge fan of Sheldon's books. Another loser, Beverly Marsh, once encountered a time traveler named Jake Epping, who is a character in 11/22/1963, and he discusses her battle with Pennywise with her. And side note, that story also mentions a Texas football team from Arnett, which is the hometown of Stu Redman from The Stand. The losers are also terrorized by a bully named Henry Bowers, who was later institutionalized at the asylum called Juniper Hill. This is also
Damn. So I never did watch the second one. I never did watch chapter 2. So he ended up surviving that fall. Cause I knew he fell in I forgot where he fell at, but I thought he died, but he's still alive. Okay.
where they sent Nettie Cobb from Needful Things after she killed her husband. Needful Things also takes place in Castle Rock, which has so many connections to Stephen King that there's an entire TV series set in the Stephen King multiverse that revolves around just that town. We're going to talk about Castle Rock later on. But back to Juniper Hill Asylum. This was also the home to the space cowboy, the villain in Gerald's Game. Now that movie features a solar eclipse over Dark Score Lake, the same eclipse that was featured in Dolores Claiborne, who also has a psychic connection with Jessie, the heroine in Gerald's Game. Jessie hears a voice in her head that she names after her second grade teacher, Miss Petrie, which is the name of Garrity's teacher in The Long Walk. Now, both Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne take place at Dark Score Lake, which is also mentioned in Bag of Bones, when they say that the Micmac Indians still haunt the lake shores. Now, that Micmac tribe is also mentioned in The Cell, which contains a reference to Charlie the Choo Choo, a train taken over by an evil spirit in the third Dark Tower book. But back to Bag of Bones. See, Mike and Joanna Noonan both live in Derry. In fact,
like, there's so much information going on right now, bro. Half of this shit I don't even know about. But basically, a lot of references. A lot of things that happen in the any adaptation pretty much has a connection. Some certain characters have a connection to different things, different characters that are set in the same universe. So yeah, let's continue.
Joe is a big fan of the novels by Bill Denbrough, one of the Losers Club. Mike Noonan is also an author, and one of his books has a character named Ray Garrity, which is also the name of one of the kids in The Long Walk, which is appropriate because Stephen King wrote that book under a pseudonym, Richard Bachman, so it's not exactly canon to the rest of his universe. Derry is also the setting for the movies Secret Window and Dreamcatcher, which directly references the ending of It. When Mr. Gray takes Jonesy to Standpipe Hill, the alien finds out that the standpipe was destroyed in the flood of 1985, and there's even a statue commemorating those lost in the storm. The flood of 85 occurred after the Losers Club finally defeated Pennywise in that year. And in chapter 2, Derry is...
Yeah, I believe after the Losers Club killed Pennywise the first time, nothing but natural disasters hit Derry. I believe like he said, a huge flood or something like that. So it's freaking crazy.
Is also home of the homophobic bully Stephen Dubé, who was sent to Shawshank Prison. And of course, that's the setting for the best Stephen King movie, The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, I haven't watched it, but
all over Stephen King's canon.
I gotta watch it.
In 11/22/1963, we learned that Harry Dunning's father died in that prison. But of course, the most famous inmate there was Andy Dufresne. But before he was wrongfully convicted of a crime, he created a stock portfolio for a man named Denker, who is actually the Nazi war criminal Dusender from The Apt Pupil. Now, Shawshank is in the fictional town of Haven, Maine, where the Colorado Kid takes place, which was adapted into the show Haven. And back to Bag of Bones, we learned that the former sheriff of Castle County, George Randolph Fortman, was sent to Shawshank after killing Matty DeVore. Now, Castle County is the home of Castle Rock, a major hub in Stephen King stories. For instance, there is the Dead Zone, where Johnny Smith also has the touch or the shine, depending on what universe you're from. Now, Johnny tried to assassinate Jed Bartlett, who used a baby for a human shield, and was killed and buried next to the Marstons. That is the name of the family who previously lived in the spooky house from Salem's Lot. The Dead Zone also features Richard Dees, a reporter for a tabloid called The Inside View, which is mentioned in Bag of Bones and in Dr. Sleep, when Lucy tells Abra that she doesn't want her to go on the Inside View show. Now, that reporter, Richard Dees, also appears in The Night Flyer, where he's tracking a vampire for the tabloid, and he also appears in the Tommyknockers to investigate an alien object that starts to influence the small town of Haven, which, of course, is the setting for the Shawshank Redemption. Now, that alien object attracts the attention of the shady government agency, the Shop. You remember them from earlier. And
also, make
the
something
town
with
of Derry
them
is mentioned several times because it's just one town over from Haven. In fact, in the Tommyknockers, when Tommy Jacklin travels to Derry, he has a vision of Pennywise in the sewers. And Derry is also mentioned in Stand By Me, when the kids are talking about how the body of Ray Brower could have ended up where they found it. The dead kid, by the way, Ray Brower, is from Chamberlain, Maine, which is the same town where Carrie White grew up, making it the pig's blood capital of New England. Stand By Me primarily takes place in the aforementioned Castle Rock, which is also the town where a St. Bernard named Cujo went on a rampage after getting rabies from a bat. Cujo was fire. George Bannerman, who was the law officer in Castle Rock during the Dead Zone. Afterwards, Bannerman was replaced by Alan Pangborn, who was sheriff during the Dark Half.
Forgot what his freaking name is.
Thad Beaumont fights off his evil persona named Stark. And in Bag of Bones, Mike Noonan mentions that Thad ended up committing suicide after he left Castle Rock. Now, that was Alan Pangborn's first big case, but his last was in the story Needful Things, where the devil opens up a pawn shop in Castle Rock and manipulates the town people into fighting one another. And in particular, the devil manipulates Ace Morrell, who is a young younger man tormented the kids in Stand By Me. Now, in Needful Things, Alan talks about the anti-gambling pins people are wearing and compares them to smiley face buttons. Smiley face buttons are very important in King's stories. I already mentioned how they are a symbol of Randall Flagg and how he applied a smiley face sticker to the wing of the plane in the Langoliers. But a smiley face is also the insignia for the serial killer in Mr. Mercedes, and in Desperation, there's a smiley face sticker on the bag of weed that gets Peter and Mary in trouble with the law. And in that same story, Billingsley tells David that it is rumored that the Tommyknockers actually caused the cave-in at a mine back in the 19th century. Also, Alan Carver from Desperation is a big fan of the mystery novels written by Paul Sheldon from Misery.
It's fantastic.
Ah, damn.
And to bring it all back full circle, remember Paul used to live across the street from the Kasparaks, Eddie's family from It, which means that he also grew up in Derry. And in the book It, Eddie and the other losers defeat Pennywise with the help of a turtle spirit called Maturin.
Yep.
Maturin is one of the 12 guardians of the Dark Tower who were first mentioned in book 3. Roland even recites the same poem about the turtle that the losers recite in It. And this is because, as they say in Roland's world, all things serve the beam and all roads lead to the Dark Tower, which is why it's a little frustrating that Stephen King's magnum opus still hasn't gotten a loyal screen adaptation.
Man.
Hey, I want to give a big shout out to the website Derry Connections that meticulously cataloged many of these connections to the novels, and to writer Britt Hayes.
So basically, all these things happen because of the Crimson King. Is that what yeah, I believe that's what they said, because usually the villains of these events that happen are, I guess, servants of the Crimson King and everything, man. I'm really like all the other stuff that he mentioned. Cool. I'm most likely not really gonna worry about those. I'm not ever gonna watch those, because I saw one that played on ABC. That was probably a little TV film or whatever that they played at that time, and I'm most likely never gonna watch that one. Still gotta watch Shawshank and everything. Still gotta watch Dr. Sleep. All those films, and obviously, all that has to be connected to The Shining from the film, the Stanley Kubrick's film, because they had made a whole sequel to that film. So it most likely has to be connected, which I really don't want that character to die, bro. Which I forgot his name in Welcome to Derry, but he has to shine too, obviously. And his character is so good, dog. I just love his character. But we know the fate of him, which is very unfortunate. But we got Dark Tower with Idris Elba, and never watched it. Never really cared to watch it. I still don't think people understand how big this whole thing is, because people see Pennywise and everything, dog. You know, people are most likely trying to find out the lore and everything now, because Welcome to Derry is very popular right now. But I don't think people realize how big this is, and how much lore is really in this universe, and how much lore is really dealing with it and the Crimson King and all kind of stuff, which I hope they dive into one day, because this is a big missed opportunity. They keep making Stephen King films, but they try their best not to do anything that really connects them together. But fans of Stephen King know that they connect together in some way. So this is very interesting, man. A lot of stuff was said in this video. I'm not gonna lie. Most of that didn't even really I don't really remember. But basically, the Crimson King is the big bad and everything, man. So we just got to wait to see. I'm gonna finish it. Welcome to Derry, and I will most likely do a review for it, and we're gonna see what's up, dog. But Let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe.